that skateboarding has affected people, and assuming that that means like how it affects their lives and become something that they are interested in. I think if you span it over decades and go back to the 70s, 80s, people, the window of time that typically they would be involved in it was relatively small back in the 70s and even in the 80s, whereas now there's people who've been skating for 30 years and it's been all they've done, so I think that it's just with skateboard parks popping up everywhere and it becomes more a part of their life and not just something they do.
So the skateboarding style has really changed over the years. For instance, what was in the 80s was more kind of like a fish type of setup, so you kind of have a smaller nose here and like a wider flared out tail. And that worked really well because most of the skateboarders are skating like transition type of stuff. But as skateboarding went to the streets and people wanted to do technical stuff, like where you can flip the board over and whatnot, it's really transitioned into more of like a pill-shaped skateboard with even concave on both sides of it.
A lot of the pools that we skate nowadays are like permission pools. We don't trespass as much as we used to. There's a lot of pools, I mean, that, some of the best pools that I've ever skated are really not built for skateboarding, which is pretty cool. So I think how it's changed more than anything is that we get to skate a lot of pools that were just made for skating, and that's the deal with John's pool and stuff too. A lot of guys are designing their own pools in their backyards, and then also there's pools in skate parks too, which are really fun to skate. But the ultimate thrill really is to go into somebody's backyard and actually skate a pool that's not really made for skateboarding. So I'd say that's how it's changed most. With riding, definitely has gotten better. But then back in the day, riding little boards with no pads and no gear, for protection, it was pretty hardcore back then too. So I kind of miss the old days, but I sure like riding all the good pools that we have nowadays.
And the urethane wheel being developed, it just made a lot of stuff more possible. People started being able to skate like empty swimming pools, just even banks in schoolyards and stuff like that, where a normal board would zip out. And you could also put a lot more torque on the board and turn it a lot faster, so people could do like 360s and stuff like that. And it really just opened up a lot of terrain to the skateboard that was never really considered feasible with clay and metal wheels. So that was probably like the first, evolution of skateboard tricks. Prior to that, I think it was just like how long can you point it and hold on before you hit a rock and die. But as skateboards kind of morphed into the 80s and pool skating became more and more popular, boards started getting bigger and stuff like that. People started pushing the limits and doing more. What people would consider like bowl skating, ramp skating, stuff like that really kind of started to hit its peak in the late 70s and into spilling over into the 80s. And that's when a lot of the skateboard parks closed up, and so that's forced people into backyard ramps, and that because you could build a ramp and you wanted to emulate the transition of an empty pool, but you could make it a little more user friendly so it wasn't so gnarly. So a lot more stuff became possible to do on ramps, and that's how like tricks started getting people to do higher airs and inverts and a bunch of different ground tricks. With street skating coming along, again, kind of an evolutionary thing. A lot of times people will be messing around after going to the skate park and treat a curb like it was coking in a bowl and just start doing tricks and messing around, and next thing you know, it's like a whole style of skateboarding was born in that. And street skating, the tricks, a lot of the foundations of the tricks are still the same as they were, like say in the late 80s, early 90s, but they're just doing them so much cleaner, bigger, over bigger stuff, onto bigger stuff. So yeah, I don't know. It's crazy to see, how far it can go. But there's definitely been video parts that I've watched in the last 10 years that I've thought, that's it. That's like as gnarly a skateboard as you can get. And then lo and behold, a couple years later, you see another part that just makes you think a whole new thing. I didn't see that one coming. So.